The sun was setting over Paris as Ibrahim Traoré stepped off the curb and into the bustling terminal of Charles de Gaulle Airport. Dressed in a simple pair of jeans, a blazer, and sneakers, he looked like any other traveler returning home after a long trip. No entourage accompanied him, no security detail hovered nearby. For Ibrahim, this wasn't just practical, it was deliberate. As the President of Burkina Faso, he believed that true leadership meant leading by example. Humility wasn't weakness, it was strength. His diplomatic mission to Europe had been exhausting but fruitful. He'd met with world leaders, advocated for climate justice, and secured vital partnerships for his country's development. Yet, instead of retreating to the comforts of first class or a private jet, he chose to fly business class on Flight AF 427 back to Ouagadougou. To him, this decision symbolized solidarity with his people, with ordinary citizens everywhere who worked hard and traveled humbly. As he boarded the plane, finding his seat near the window, Ibrahim noticed the diversity around him. Families reunited after years apart, students heading home for holidays, professionals chasing dreams across continents, all stories woven together in the small confines of an airplane cabin. Sitting beside him was Sarah Bennett, a young journalist from London. She was typing furiously on her laptop, pausing occasionally to glance out the window at the fading light. Her presence intrigued him. There was something about her energy, a mix of determination and curiosity, that reminded him of his younger self. The engines roared to life, and the plane began its ascent. Just as everyone settled in, the intercom crackled to life. The captain's voice boomed through the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, due to unforeseen circumstances, all first-class seats have been upgraded to accommodate VIP passengers. Unfortunately, one remaining seat must be reassigned. A murmur rippled through the cabin. First-class upgrades were rare, and tension filled the air as passengers wondered who would claim the coveted spot. Enter Vincent Leclerc, a high-ranking French CEO known for his sharp suits and sharper tongue. He strode down the aisle, his polished leather shoes clicking against the floor. His expression betrayed impatience as he approached the flight attendant's station. "I trust you'll handle this appropriately," he said curtly, leaving no room for negotiation. Claire, the senior flight attendant, felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Her eyes scanned the cabin, searching for someone willing, or perhaps unable, to resist being relocated. That's when her gaze landed on Ibrahim. Something about his casual attire and calm demeanor made him seem insignificant. Without hesitation, she decided he would be her target. What Claire didn't realize was that Ibrahim's humility masked immense authority. While she saw only a quiet man in jeans, others aboard the flight sensed something deeper, something unspoken yet undeniable. And unbeknownst to Claire, her choice to single out Ibrahim would set off a chain reaction neither she nor Vincent could foresee. As Claire approached Ibrahim with a forced smile, Sarah glanced up from her laptop, sensing trouble brewing. "Sir," Claire began, her tone polite but tinged with condescension, "would you mind relocating to economy so we can accommodate another passenger?" Ibrahim looked up, meeting her gaze with steady eyes. What would he say? And why did Sarah feel a sudden urge to intervene? Claire's question hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and charged with implications. Ibrahim didn't flinch. His calm demeanor was unwavering, his piercing gaze locking onto Claire's as if peeling back layers she'd rather keep hidden. "Why me?" he asked simply, his voice low but firm. It wasn't an accusation, it was curiosity laced with quiet authority. For a moment, Claire faltered. She hadn't expected resistance. Most passengers would have nodded politely or grumbled under their breath before gathering their belongings. But this man, this unassuming traveler in jeans and sneakers, wasn't budging. Her practiced smile wavered slightly, and she scrambled for words. "Well, sir," she stammered, "others may need the space more urgently." Her explanation trailed off awkwardly, leaving a void that Vincent Leclerc quickly filled. From his seat near the front of the cabin, he leaned forward impatiently, tapping his fingers against the armrest. "Is there a problem here?" he called out, his tone dripping with irritation. Claire turned toward him, visibly relieved to redirect her focus. "No, Mr. Leclerc, just resolving seating arrangements," she assured him hastily. But Sarah Bennett couldn't stay silent any longer. Watching the exchange unfold, she felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Claire's behavior struck her as suspiciously selective and deeply unfair. When Claire muttered something under her breath about prioritizing important people, Sarah leaned forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Excuse me," she interjected, fixing Claire with a pointed stare. "Are you asking him to move because of his race? That wouldn't be fair." The cabin seemed to hold its collective breath. Claire flushed crimson, caught off guard by Sarah's boldness. Passengers nearby exchanged uneasy glances, some nodding in agreement while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Claire tried to deflect, her professional mask slipping further. "Of course not," she insisted, though her tone lacked conviction. "We're following standard protocol." Ibrahim remained calm throughout, observing everything with the kind of quiet intensity that made those around him feel both seen and unsettled. Finally, he spoke again, his voice steady and measured. "Let's resolve this peacefully," he said, addressing Claire directly. "I'll remain here, but perhaps Mr. Leclerc would prefer my seat if it means so much to him." The suggestion stunned everyone within earshot. Claire froze, unsure how to respond. Offering such a solution implied a level of confidence and self-assurance that didn't match the image she'd formed of him. Meanwhile, Vincent scoffed loudly, dismissing Ibrahim entirely. To him, this man was clearly beneath consideration, a nobody whose opinion carried no weight. Yet there was something unnerving about Ibrahim's composure, something that gnawed at the edges of Vincent's arrogance. Sarah watched the scene unfold with growing admiration for Ibrahim. There was a quiet dignity in the way he handled himself, refusing to let bias dictate his actions. At the same time, unease prickled at the back of her mind. Claire's insistence on singling him out felt wrong, not just morally, but instinctively. Why target him specifically? Was it truly coincidence, or was there more beneath the surface? As Claire hesitated, torn between enforcing her decision and avoiding further conflict, the intercom buzzed suddenly. The pilot requested her presence in the cockpit immediately. Claire's face paled, and she shot a fleeting glance at Ibrahim before hurrying away, her polished exterior cracking under pressure. What urgent matter could possibly require her attention mid-flight? And why did Sarah get the distinct impression that this incident was far from over? Claire hurried toward the cockpit, her heels clicking sharply against the narrow aisle. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by the growing unease in her chest. She knocked lightly on the cockpit door, and it swung open to reveal the captain, his expression grim. "We've received communication from ground control," he said without preamble, his voice low but urgent. Facial recognition flagged one of our passengers early in the flight, a high-profile individual. "They're monitoring the situation discreetly." Claire's stomach dropped. High profile? Who could it be? The captain didn't elaborate further, leaving her to piece together the implications on her own. As she returned to the cabin, her mind raced with possibilities. Could it be someone seated near the front? Or perhaps Ibrahim? No, that couldn't be right. He was too unassuming, too ordinary, or so she had assumed. Back in business class, the tension lingered like a thick fog. Vincent Leclerc sat rigidly in his seat, still simmering with frustration over the seating fiasco. His impatience boiled over when a flight attendant accidentally brought him sparkling water instead of champagne. "Is this some kind of joke?" he snapped, slamming the glass onto his tray table. Nearby passengers exchanged uncomfortable glances, while Sarah stifled a sigh of exasperation. Ibrahim, meanwhile, remained unperturbed. He leaned back in his seat, gazing out the window at the endless expanse of clouds below. Yet beneath his calm exterior, his mind was working steadily. He knew that moments like these, when power dynamics were laid bare, offered opportunities for reflection and growth. For those willing to see, they revealed truths about humanity itself. Suddenly, turbulence rocked the plane, sending trays clattering and passengers gripping their armrests. A collective gasp rippled through the cabin as the aircraft shuddered violently. Claire instinctively reached for the nearest handrail, her knuckles white with tension. Amid the chaos, Vincent lost all semblance of composure. "Fix this mess once and for all," he barked at Claire, his face flushed with anger. But then, amidst the commotion, an elderly woman sitting across from Ibrahim rose slowly to her feet. Her voice cut through the noise like a bell tolling in a storm. "Leave him alone," she declared loudly, pointing directly at Ibrahim. Heads turned in surprise, including Claire's. "If anyone deserves respect, it's this man." The words hung in the air, charged with meaning. Passengers murmured among themselves, sensing something significant unfolding before them. Claire froze, momentarily paralyzed by the weight of the moment. Who was this man? She replayed the captain's cryptic warning in her head, suddenly questioning every assumption she'd made. Meanwhile, Sarah watched the elderly woman intently, struck by the conviction in her tone. There was something almost reverent about the way she spoke and looked at Ibrahim. It wasn't just admiration, it bordered on reverence. As the turbulence subsided and the plane steadied, the elderly woman leaned closer to Ibrahim, speaking softly enough that only those nearby could hear. "You don't know who you're dealing with," she whispered cryptically, casting a meaningful glance at Claire. Then she sank back into her seat, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. The cabin fell silent, save for the hum of the engines. Passengers exchanged bewildered looks, piecing together fragments of what they'd witnessed. Sarah pulled out her phone, her fingers hovering over the screen. Should she record what was happening? Was this story bigger than any of them realized? And most importantly, who exactly was Ibrahim Traoré, and why did it feel like the world was about to find out? The plane descended steadily, the golden hues of sunset painting the horizon as Ouagadougou came into view. Passengers craned their necks to catch glimpses of the city below, eager to end their journey. But as the wheels touched down with a gentle thud, an unexpected sight greeted them outside the terminal, a grand military welcome. Soldiers stood in formation, their uniforms crisp under the fading sunlight, while military vehicles lined the runway. Cameras flashed wildly as reporters jostled for position. Inside the cabin, confusion rippled through the passengers. Who could possibly warrant such a reception? Claire hurried to the cockpit once again, seeking clarity. The captain confirmed that the welcoming party was indeed for someone aboard, but who? Her heart raced as she scanned the faces around her, landing finally on Ibrahim. Could it really be him? Ibrahim rose gracefully from his seat, retrieving his backpack with the same quiet poise he'd shown throughout the flight. Before stepping into the aisle, he paused briefly beside Sarah. "Thank you for standing up for what's right," he murmured softly, his voice warm, yet tinged with gratitude. Then, without another word, he moved forward, walking past Vincent, whose jaw dropped in stunned realization. As Ibrahim disappeared down the aisle, the truth began to dawn on those watching. Gasps echoed through the cabin as passengers pieced together the clues, the elderly woman's cryptic warning, Claire's unease, and now this unprecedented display of honor. Vincent slumped back into his seat, his arrogance replaced by a mix of disbelief and shame. He had underestimated this man, dismissing him as insignificant, only to discover he was addressing the President of Burkina Faso. Outside, the scene grew even more dramatic. As Ibrahim emerged onto the tarmac, soldiers saluted sharply, their movements synchronized like clockwork. Reporters shouted questions, their cameras capturing every detail of his composed demeanor. Claire watched from the plane window, her hands trembling. She had made a grave mistake, and now the world would know about it. Back inside the cabin, Sarah couldn't contain her emotions. Tears welled in her eyes as she replayed the events of the flight in her mind. This wasn't just a story, it was history unfolding before her very eyes. Determined to share the moment with the world, she pulled out her phone and uploaded a short video clip of Ibrahim's calm resistance against discrimination. Within minutes, the hashtag #RespectForAll began trending globally. People everywhere were inspired by his humility and resilience, sparking conversations about dignity, equality, and justice. Meanwhile, Claire faced the consequences of her actions. Airport security detained both her and Vincent upon disembarking, citing public disrespect toward a head of state. Claire felt a wave of nausea wash over her as she realized the gravity of her error. How could she have been so blind? Yet even in her despair, there was a flicker of hope. Perhaps this moment would serve as a turning point, not just for her, but for others who harbored similar biases. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the runway, Ibrahim addressed the gathered crowd with words that resonated deeply. True power lies not in titles or wealth, but in treating every human being with dignity. His message echoed far beyond the airport, igniting a global outcry against racism and colonial attitudes. But what ripple effects would this incident create? Would Claire and Vincent find redemption? And how would Sarah's article shape the narrative moving forward? The days following the flight were a whirlwind of headlines, hashtags, and heated debates. News outlets around the world dissected every detail of the incident aboard Flight AF-427, transforming it into a symbol of resistance against systemic racism and outdated colonial attitudes. For many, Ibrahim Traoré's quiet defiance represented not just an individual act of courage, but a collective call for change. Claire and Vincent found themselves at the center of a media storm. Claire's biased behavior and Vincent's entitled demands became case studies in discussions about privilege and prejudice. Both faced legal repercussions. Claire was suspended pending investigation, while Vincent was formally reprimanded by his company's board of directors. Yet, amidst the scrutiny, something unexpected happened. Claire began attending workshops on racial bias and volunteering with organizations dedicated to combating discrimination. Her transformation, though slow and painful, served as a testament to the possibility of growth, even after grave mistakes. Vincent, however, struggled to accept responsibility. He retreated from public view, issuing a curt apology that rang hollow to most observers. But even he couldn't escape the weight of accountability. His actions sparked conversations within corporate circles about entitlement and respect, forcing leaders to confront uncomfortable truths about their own biases. Hook. Sarah Bennett, meanwhile, poured her heart into writing an article titled "The Man Who Changed My Perspective." Published in a prominent international magazine, the piece recounted her experience on the flight, from witnessing Claire's discriminatory targeting to marveling at Ibrahim's quiet strength. Readers flooded social media with messages of gratitude, inspired by the story's universal themes of humility and humanity. One comment stood out: "This is the kind of leadership we need more of in the world." Months later, Sarah received an invitation to visit Burkina Faso. It came directly from Ibrahim himself, who expressed gratitude for her courage during the flight. When she arrived in Ouagadougou, she was struck by the vibrancy of the city. The bustling markets, the laughter of children playing in the streets, and the palpable sense of hope permeating the air. Over tea in a modest garden, Ibrahim thanked her personally. "Stories like yours remind us that dignity isn't given, it's earned through action," he said, his voice steady yet filled with warmth. Twist. Their conversation turned reflective as they discussed the ripple effects of that fateful flight. The global outcry had ignited movements advocating for equality and respect, particularly across Africa. Nations once dismissed as insignificant were now demanding recognition, not through aggression, but through unity and resilience. Ibrahim shared his vision for a rising Africa, one that embraced its rich heritage while forging new paths toward progress. "We rise together, or we fall apart," he concluded, his words echoing like a mantra. But perhaps the most profound impact was felt closer to home. Claire's journey of redemption gained attention when she joined forces with grassroots activists working to dismantle systemic racism. She spoke candidly about her missteps, using her platform to educate others. Though forgiveness didn't come easily, her efforts earned cautious respect from those who saw her sincerity.